has the leader of the opposition lost his X factor? Here to discuss are internet broadcaster Olly Mann, Carol Malone and Ken Livingstone. Ken, do you think he's lost it?
Well, I think people aren't fools. They remember this was what led them to vote for Tony Blair, all this charm and smarm, all that I'm a regular guy. And I think that the longer he's copied that, and I mean, when he started out, he had all this lines about, well, I'm really the heir to Tony Blair, and it's just too much. We've been caught once. I don't think people are going to fall for that again. They're looking at the policies. I don't think Brown's got more popular. I think people have focused on some of the things the Tories said at their conference about the scale of cuts, and they think this might be really bad news. They're coming after our pension or our teachers or our health.
But we all know that regardless of who we get, they're going to be cuts, left or right.
But the question is the balance between tax increases on the well-off, who've done very well in the last 30 years, and ordinary people who haven't, frankly. And all those bankers, they get their bonuses back, they're still laughing. And now we're told, well, it's going to be your kid's school will lose a teacher, you'll lose your beat police officer. You can't... I mean, we always say this about, oh, there'll just be cuts in waste. It's never like that. They end up real cuts in the things that matter to ordinary people.
Carol?
I'm not sure you ever had the X factor. What I think is that, you know, if the Tories win I've never thought the Tories are going to win the next election. I think Labour is going to lose the next election. I think that's the problem. People don't know, you know, it's for people like me, you know, I've never voted Tory in my life because I would feel it was a betrayal of where I'm from. However, I don't want to vote Labour again because this is not a socialist party anymore. This is not for working class people anymore. So that's why I think this poll isn't that important, you know, because it says that there is 6 points between them. I think that's a rogue poll, actually.
Well, the other thing is, Olly, there's another 6 months to go yet. Yeah. I mean, the week is a long time in politics, then six months certainly are. But do you think he's lost the plot a little bit, or people have lost faith in him? The novelty is beginning to wear off?
Well, I think the novelty is beginning to wear off, but in a way that's inevitable, because he had quite a long extended honeymoon. Just by being a Tory, people felt they could vote for. Like you were saying, he wasn't Ian Duncan Smith, and he wasn't Michael Howard, he wasn't making everything about the euro and immigration. You sort of looked at him and you thought, OK, he's quite an interesting guy, he's speaking without notes, he's got conviction. So inevitably he's going to plummet a bit from that. But as Ken was saying, this isn't so much about the popularity of him, and it is about the unpopularity of Gordon Brown. That's what's going to be the problem here.
But I think you're wrong too as well, in the sense that, you know, you talked about style over substance at the beginning, and I think style is very important in 21st century politics, and I think that's one of the reasons Cameron, you know, was so popular, maybe still is so popular. You know, he's got the best head of hair since Margaret Thatcher. All those other people you mentioned, you know, they look like old men. He looks like he's of the 21st century as opposed to the 14th century. You know, he looks good, he sounds good. He's like exactly what Ken says, he's like Blair. I think it matters.
We've been caught like this. I mean, it used to be politics was a serious debate about the issues. Increasingly it's, are they good looking? Would you like to sit next to them at a dinner party?
It is,
and
but that's sad, but it is.
I mean, the two politicians who most changed the last 60 years are Clem Attlee, who people didn't even know he was in the room, but he's hard as nails and doing the job, and then Margaret Thatcher. No one liked Margaret Thatcher, but they respected her. Now we've got to like politicians, you know?
He's got to represent change as well, that's the other thing, and he does keep banging on about it, and the thing is, he's not our Barack Obama, is he? I mean, he's not cut from a different cloth of other politicians. You know, this is someone who used to work for Norman Lamont and does basically such a good impression of Tony Blair, you might as well go and fill in for Rory Bremner. But the point is, he is different. And I think from the people I speak to, who I know who work for the civil service, and just generally when you go out and ask people, they're not stupid, like you say, they know. David Cameron's not all changed, but he's changed enough, he's different.
Isn't the bottom line of this, people want a politician they can trust?
Yes.
They want somebody who says one thing and does it as well.
Does one live and breathe? That's the question after. Is there one out there that exists? Because what we've learned this year with the expenses scandal is we don't trust any of them, you know? What we see is not necessarily what you get, and that's the shame.
And I think his problem is he's the best of them.
Yes.
I think while they're focused on Cameron, they're doing quite well. Every time Osborne pops up, their vote goes down, you know? Because people look behind Cameron, they think, we really don't like the look of that lot. They almost look as though they're going to enjoy making the cuts, you know? They don't really look as... I mean, at least some of the old Tories like Macmillan had a genuine sort of, we've got to do something for the poor, carry them with us. These are all bright young people who did very well in the boom in the city.
But don't you think that Cameron, when he's talking about the age of austerity, you know, he's telling the truth. He's telling it like it's going to be. Brown won't address it. All Brown will say is that, you know, in the next 4 years they're going to halve the 170 billion debt. But he doesn't say how.
If his majority is very much reduced, it will have to be hung parliament.
Yeah.
He will have to get the Liberals on his side, the Lib Dems on his side.
Yeah.
They've said, Ollie, that they would go with him rather than going with Brown. But the general consensus seems to be a hung parliament would be a disaster.
Yeah.
A parliament where the Tories didn't have a mandate, couldn't carry a vote on their own without the Lib Dems. Would it be a disaster in your view?
I think it kind of would, actually, and I'm a Lib Dem voter, but I don't vote for the Lib Dems because they're going to team up with the Tories. I vote for them because they're all about electoral reform and other things which clearly aren't going to happen if they team up with the Tories. Although Vince Cable as Chancellor, I think, would be a very good thing.
Disaster?
I've watched Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher with these huge majorities just govern and do whatever they liked and get away with it. I actually think a hung parliament where they have to persuade other parties to vote for their policies would be a very good thing.
Carol?
I think a bigger disaster than a hung parliament would be to have Gordon Brown back in power again.
I think the feeling does seem to be that people, after 12 years of Gordon Brown in government, just don't want to look at him anymore.
Actually, that's why, in a way, the politics are irrelevant. We just don't want them anymore.
Well, thank goodness for
Sarah.
He's got somebody who can cheer him up. My thanks to Ollie, Carol and Ken. Thank you very much indeed.